What you're sitting in right now is a 7.1 system. I think you're familiar, some of you are familiar with this truck. Anyway, we're not trying to pretend it's not a truck, it is. But we have 5 channels of height. So 7.1 plus the 5-channel height, and of course you're the 0.1, there's a single channel for subwoofers around you. So Gil, if you'd like to take over the technical presentation.
You're using the 4 subs in the 4 corners?
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you for coming. So I'm going to give a quick, hopefully quick, technical overview of QuantumLogic and give you a sense of how it works and how it's able to do what it is that it does. So first off, what is QuantumLogic? Well, QuantumLogic is a process that takes any audio signal, be it mono, stereo, or multi-channel, and creates a surround experience from that. Okay. So what I want to start off, I'm going to do a little discussion here about some of the core elements, the core technology that's behind QuantumLogic, so that you can have an appreciation of what's going on when you actually get to hear it in action. So fundamentally, QuantumLogic uses what I call signal decomposition at its core. And so what does that mean? Well, let's say you have a stereo piece of music just off a CD or something. QuantumLogic is able to go into that track, go into that music, and decompose it into what I call streams. So it decomposes it into a bunch of different streams. There are different types of streams. We'll talk about that in the next few minutes. But what is a stream? Well, a good simple example of a stream might be the singer on a track. So in that case, QuantumLogic would go into the track, go into the music, extract out the singer's voice and say, here it is. What do you want to do with it now? You have the singer's voice. Well, we're trying to create a surround experience here, so, well, QuantumLogic could put it there, could put it behind you, but it makes a lot of sense for QuantumLogic to put it over here at the center. But let's say you also, in that track, have saxophone and guitar. Well, QuantumLogic will extract out the saxophone, extract out the guitar, and say, okay, now what are we going to do in this surround mix with those elements? So that's one type of signal extraction, or one type of stream, rather, which I call signal extraction. Another type of stream is ambience or reverberation. So QuantumLogic is able to go into the recording and extract out the reverberation that's in that recording. So if you think, let's just imagine you have a singer on a stage of a concert hall, and that singer, he or she, is singing, and you have the sound of their voice coming out of them. If that person were in a closet, it'd be just dead, and you just have this, you'd still have the sound, but it'd just be dead. It'd be little or no reverberation. So now that person's back on the stage, they're singing, and their voice propagates through the hall, bounces around the boundaries of the hall, and creates reverberation. So coming back to this, you have this reverberation, and you have the sound of the singer's voice, and you have the reverberation. In the recording, those two are mixed together because that's, they're not separate. But QuantumLogic, given that recording, would go into it and extract things out and separate the singer's voice dry and the reverberation due to that singer. So now you'd have the reverberation from that room due to that singer. QuantumLogic is able to go a little bit deeper, quite a bit deeper than that with the ambience, and it's able to decompose it further. So if you know a little bit about concert hall acoustics or room acoustics, you would know about early reflections, right? So there's two, early reflections in a concert hall is one important part of the sound in a concert hall. Another important part of the reverberant tails. So the early reflections would be if I'm a performer on stage, as I'm performing, the sound leaves the stage, bounces off, say, the side walls and the ceiling, and those are the first sounds that reach the listener, those early sounds. And depending on where they come from, how loud are they, and their relative time between these reflections, that's going to have a big, Sure. That's going to have a big impact on the characteristic sound of that given room. It's going to be the perceptual cues that tell you a lot of information about that room. Now that sound, those sounds keep bouncing around the room, and you get these reverberant tails as it decays, and that's another very important part perceptually about the quality of that given hall. So as I said, QuantumLogic can go into the track, extract out the reverberation that's there, and then decompose it further into early reflections and these reverberant tails. So now you have all these streams related to the ambience, the reverberation, and so in creating a surround mix, QuantumLogic can put some early reflections there, above you, whatnot, as well as putting some of the, the reverberant tails in different locations around you, and now you're going to get that ambience, but you're sitting in the middle of it, so you're going to be enveloped by that ambience. But that's the reverberation extracted out of the recording itself. So those are two types of stream extraction, pulling out individual signal sources and this ambience. And there's other types, but I'm not going to get into that for time issues. And regardless of the type of stream, the very important thing to note about them is that they're perfect reconstruction. So by that I mean when QuantumLogic goes into the track, decomposes it into streams, if I just take those streams and sum them back together again, they will sum sample for sample, bit for bit, identical to the original signal. So why is that important? Well, actually it's very important, because what it tells you is that QuantumLogic is not adding anything, and it's also not losing anything, which is pretty key. What it's doing is it's creating its surround mix entirely from elements that are already in the recording itself. Okay? So this is a flow diagram of QuantumLogic in operation. So you have the input signal, which might be, and this is exactly what you have on your sheets here. So it's mono, stereo, multi-channel input signal coming in. The first block does the signal decomposition. It extracts out these various streams like I've been describing. So now you have multiple streams going forward, and they go into this next block, which is what I call signal analysis block. And what it tries to do is it tries to get some idea of what is the content, what is the signal content on these streams. For example, is there speech somewhere in this input signal? And that's important because you may want QuantumLogic to behave quite differently if there's speech in the signal versus if there is no speech. Right? You may want to have different, you may want it to react quite differently. So that's one example of the analysis that is done there. So the streams are fed forward along with this information to what I call the aesthetic engine. So if these first two blocks are really the brain of QuantumLogic in terms of very analytical and decomposition and that sort of thing, the aesthetic engine is maybe sort of the heart and soul. It's the artistic part of QuantumLogic. It says, I've got all these streams. Now, how do I create, a pleasing and aesthetically pleasing surround experience from all those streams? What do I have to do? So that's what the aesthetic engine does, and it drives this mixer. So the mixer, what it does is it takes all these many streams, and it mixes to create your surround channels, your multi-channel surround channels, depending on how many channels your system has. So it creates those outputs. And you see there's user influence, and that's basically the knob on the front panel. So, the user can take this knob and say, well, what kind of surround experience do I want? Do I want to have a situation where I have a front sound stage and everything stays, the instruments stay in the front sound stage, but I have the whole sound of the room around me? Or do I want it to go nuts and I want the guitars to fly around my head, that kind of thing? So that's where the user gets to say more or less kind of an influence. I just want to dig a little deeper into this business of the extracting out things like the voice and that sort of thing, individual signals. So look at this dark vertical line. Now look at me. Take that and turn it this way. This is trying to depict a stereo sound stage, right? So let's say we have a stereo signal coming in, and you have a pair of speakers in front of you, and this is where you're perceiving your stereo sound stage. That's your input signal. So what QuantumLogic does is it takes that stereo sound stage and it slices it up into what I call spatial slices. And that's what this is trying to depict here. And so let's see where the yellow is. Let's say that there happened to be a saxophone there, a yellow saxophone. And over here there was a green guitar. Well, the yellow saxophone falls in that spatial slice and the green guitar falls in that spatial slice. So QuantumLogic would extract out the green guitar, here it is, and they'll extract out the saxophone, the yellow saxophone, say here it is. Now what do you want to do with it? You want to create a surround experience. Well, where do you have that user knob set to? So when you say, what kind of experience do I want? Well, maybe you want kind of experience, well, yeah, I'll have the sax over here to the side, but I just want the guitar to go over a little bit, broaden the soundstage a bit. Or maybe I really want to be more radical with things. I'd like to see that saxophone behind me and that guitar off to the side. So it's sort of that idea of how much do you want that soundstage to be spread out.